you still find yourself easily angered, complaining, criticizing, and fault-finding in others, if you constantly strive to prove yourself as the best, if you're often timid, feeling anxious, insecure, or unworthy, if you live withdrawn, wishing to avoid daily activities and social connections, if you exhibit any of these signs, it's highly probable that a deep-seated inferiority complex exists within you. This very complex is what steers you away from the path to discovering life's true meaning. There once was a boy who, due to rickets, was short, unattractive, and slightly hunched. He wasn't particularly good at school, always ranking at the bottom of his class and constantly compared to his handsome, all-accomplished older brother. These experiences led him to live with profound insecurity. However, this very child, driven by his inferiority complex, eventually became a doctor of psychology and one of the 3 most influential figures in the field. The person who began with an inferiority complex and later achieved excellence was Alfred Adler. Alfred Adler had an unfortunate childhood, not well loved by others. He was frail, suffered from pneumonia, and nearly died twice. At the age of 4, he witnessed his younger brother's death and was hit by a car twice. With such a sorrowful childhood, psychoanalytic theory would suggest that someone experiencing so much trauma as a child would inevitably lead a miserable life as an adult. But was that truly the case? From his early childhood experiences, Adler was determined to become a doctor to help children with similar fates. Later, he developed a passion for psychoanalysis and became a student of Freud. However, the more he studied, the more he felt that the core tenets of psychoanalysis, such as childhood trauma or the theory of cause and effect determinism, were illogical. Thus, he departed and founded individual psychology. Later, another figure, Carl Jung, initially supported Freud but eventually publicly criticized Freud's theories. Ultimately, these 3, Freud, Adler, and Jung, shaped the landscape of psychology, becoming its 3 giants. Individual psychology, contrary to psychoanalytic theory, believes that what a person has experienced is not as important as how that individual subjectively perceives those past experiences. For instance, we often think that the reason we dislike someone is because they have many irritating flaws. However, individual psychology reveals that it's because you are determined to avoid a relationship with this person that you deliberately seek out a list of their flaws to justify disliking them. The reason you don't want a relationship with this person is to protect yourself from potential harm within that connection. Your effort to pinpoint others' flaws is a highly subjective act. I've presented a bit about individual psychology because this teleological perspective, a core tenet of individual psychology, will be conveyed throughout the entire book. Before reading, you need to grasp this concept. Equipping yourself with this mental framework will make your reading more effective. This is incredibly important. As for what a mental framework is, you can learn more about it in the book, Secrets to Becoming Excellent. Inferiority makes you misunderstand the meaning of life. The feeling of inferiority is the start of becoming superior. Adler affirmed that all of us, more or less, harbor deep-seated complexes within our souls. Complexes about appearance, about meager income, unfulfilling jobs, lack of education, humble origins, and so on. There was a young boy of modest height who daily inserted shoe lifts to gain an extra 3 to 4 centimeters. When taking photos with friends, he would secretly stand on his tiptoes. This surreptitious tiptoeing actually revealed a definite complex he had about his height. But is it wrong? Is it something to be ashamed of? Of course not. For a long time, many of us have exaggerated the negative aspects of our inferiority complex, silently holding onto our perceived shortcomings, hiding them in the shadows, always fearing others would see our weaknesses. But Adler tells us that a person's life is inherently a process of overcoming complexes and striving for superiority. Having a complex is normal, there's no need to be ashamed of it. He even argued that all human civilizations developed thanks to complexes, and it is this very feeling of inadequacy that becomes our driving force for progress. Look at Adler's own life, and you'll see this clearly. A great poet once said, "Nature confines humanity in darkness, compelling them to forever yearn for light." It is this yearning to overcome feelings of inadequacy that drives us to improve ourselves. However, without the right method, you could be helplessly trapped by your complex. For example, a person who grew up in poverty, scorned by others, might feel compelled to earn vast sums of money and become wealthy at all costs, even if that money holds no real meaning for them. Or a child whose parents constantly told him, "The neighbor's kid got good grades, what about you?" This child would grow up highly competitive, striving for top grades in school and promotions at work. Adler had a patient named Margaret who frequently had affairs with married men. Even more chilling, she poisoned several women to steal their husbands. As Adler studied her, he discovered that Margaret was an abandoned child, small and somewhat deformed from birth. The reason she could be so cruel was that only by stealing another woman's husband did she feel a sense of superiority. It was her inferiority complex that fueled her craving for external attention, ultimately leading her down a criminal path. You see, these feelings of helplessness lead people to succumb to fate. If one takes the right path, the complex can become beneficial, acting as a leverage that truly makes that person outstanding, as exemplified by Adler himself. This kind of complex is what Adler called feelings of inferiority. But conversely, if one goes astray in the pursuit of superiority, that person will certainly fall into error and lose the meaning of life. In individual psychology, this detrimental type of complex is called an inferiority complex. Having an inferiority feeling is not wrong. It is the asterisk inferiority complex that destroys you. People with an inferiority complex often blame others, believing their uncontrollable weaknesses are due to their parents, environment, an unfair life, or external forces. This blaming behavior serves to compensate for their inner insecurity, but not being as good as someone else doesn't mean you are inherently inferior. Subjectively internalizing feelings of inadequacy will lead to a sense of inferiority and an obsession with it. Conversely, excessive confidence is also a manifestation of an inferiority complex. Some people always believe they are superior to others, constantly bragging about themselves and exaggerating their achievements and abilities. However, they do this to conceal their feelings of weakness, helplessness, and dependency. At this point, from an inferiority complex, they fall into a superiority complex. These two complexes often coexist and overlap. Be wary of both excessive self-doubt and overconfidence. If these complexes control you, they will lead you to errors, mental disorders, and the loss of life's meaning. You must strive to recognize these complexes within yourself or observe them in those around you. This is crucial. Some signs that you might have an inferiority complex include always feeling insecure, disadvantaged, or unworthy, constantly comparing yourself to others, withdrawing from daily activities and social interactions, being irritable, anxious, or disappointed, feeling hostile, experiencing insomnia, depression, or anxiety, among others. As for those with a superiority complex, they often seek attention and validation from others, are sensitive to criticism and frequently criticize others, constantly talk about their achievements, always scrutinize others for faults, are excessively competitive and aggressive. If you notice these signs, carefully observe yourself. It's time to turn inward, understand the deep-seated complexes within you to overcome difficulties, or encourage others to seek professional help. Inferiority has been with us since childhood. Adler's research found two types of inferiority complexes. First is primary inferiority, which begins in childhood due to feelings of helplessness or being unfavorably compared to others, leading to an inferiority complex in adulthood. Second is secondary inferiority, which occurs in adults who fail to achieve their subjective goals for safety and success. As a result, lingering emotions from childhood intensify, creating an inferiority complex. You'll find that inferiority complexes often manifest through a series of events fueled by childhood memories and symptoms. The author concluded that there are three types of people prone to complexes and problems. First, children with congenital disabilities or deficiencies, lacking a body part or certain ability. These children tend to be self-absorbed and introverted, even feeling isolated and disconnected from the world, hence struggling to cooperate with others. Second, overly pampered children. These are children who, being favored from a young age, easily assume they are the center of attention, achieving things without needing to contribute or cooperate with others. And third, abandoned or emotionally deprived children. In the eyes of a child living without the opportunity to experience love and cooperation, the world is cold and unfriendly. As adults, They often believe they must fight to achieve anything. Do you notice a common trait among these children? A lack of cooperative ability. When a person harbors an inner complex, according to Adler's theory of compensation, they will seek every means to escape it. But if their subjective perception veers off course in seeking compensation, it will lead to a false sense of superiority, as these errors will cause them to withdraw, live in isolation, or behave selfishly, competitively, possessively, even committing crimes. Conversely, if compensation is pursued in the right direction, that person will genuinely achieve excellence. So, what is the right direction here? What is the path for us to overcome our complexes and achieve greater excellence? Adler stated that all human problems are problems of cooperation. A person living with an inferiority complex will not know how to cooperate with others, leading to a series of painful problems in life and a misunderstanding of life's meaning. So, where does the true meaning of life lie? We often say, it's easier to change rivers and mountains than to change one's nature. But Adler disagreed. Individual psychology believes that the reason people don't change is because they don't want to change their self-interest. Change means accepting uncertainty and facing difficulties. However, people always prefer stability and ease, thus lacking the courage to change. The reason someone wrongly pursues superiority is because they are too self-centered, unable to cooperate with others, and fail to develop community interest. So, if you must live to achieve something, instead of living for personal gain, live for the benefit of the community. If a person can shift their individual egoistic interests to social interests, contributing to others, they will undoubtedly overcome themselves. The book contains a crucial definition. The sign of whether your life has true meaning is to see if that meaning is considered valuable and shareable by others. You must understand that no matter who you are or what profession you're in, if you wish to achieve excellence, advance further, and live happier, you must dedicate your entire life to contemplating one question. What do I need to do to connect with this society? What can I do to benefit the world? Otherwise, no matter how much money you earn, how big a house you buy, how expensive a car you own, or how high your status and fame, you will always feel empty, lonely, and insecure deep down. Just as Confucius once taught, the benevolent are free from anxiety, meaning those who live by the principle of benevolence, who always care for and cooperate with others, and who address societal problems, will surely find happiness, peace, and discover true value in their lives. Connect your personal value with societal value. When you can care for and contribute to others, you will overcome your complexes and achieve true superiority. Here, there is one point that needs attention, also the most controversial and difficult for many to grasp in individual psychology: the concept of community interest that Adler refers to. In reality, it is much grander than we imagine. It's an interest not solely based on caring for others, but also encompasses concern for humanity, the earth, all forms of life and non-life, even the entire universe. This reminds me of a profound idea. I firmly believe there is always something greater than ourselves, and therefore, our life's purpose and mission, as individuals within society, is to transcend our ego to contribute to something larger than ourselves. Only when we achieve this connection do we experience a sense of belonging, a feeling of kinship. That is also one of humanity's most fundamental desires, but also the ultimate goal of life: to return to our roots. From this perspective, we can understand the core essence of this book: learning to utilize our feelings of inadequacy to dedicate ourselves wholeheartedly to something greater than ourselves, thereby finding true happiness. However, many still find the theory too vague, suggesting it might just be Adler's imagination. Yet, a master remains a master. His arguments have no flaws. The reason he was certain that the meaning of one's life must be based on cooperation and contribution to others is because he discovered the three greatest limitations in life that any human being must face. Three unshakable constraints in life. Simply by being human, you will always have to live facing these three unshakable barriers. The first constraint is about career. Because we all live on the surface of the earth, dependent on the finite resources the planet provides, we must always find work to survive. The second constraint is society. As long as we live, we will be connected to those around us. We cannot exist independently, and all our activities must be based on cooperation with others. The third constraint is the issue of love and marriage. because humans must reproduce to perpetuate the species. Look at the rings you exchange on your wedding day, the couple's matching bracelets. These are sacred symbols of belonging, but also milestones marking the days you need to cooperate to build a lasting, stable relationship together. However, some might say, I don't want to get married. I'm single by choice, so how can I be bound? It is a current reality that the proportion of young people unwilling to marry is increasing, especially in South Korea. But social surveys from 2022 by the Korean National Statistical Office reveal that among the reasons many people don't want to marry, 60% stated it was because they would have to share a home. This also relates to the issue of cooperation. Or perhaps, the person choosing to live alone harbors a deep-seated insecurity, dependency, or personal complex. Unless biochemical technology advances to the point where humans can be created directly without reproduction, these three constraints would no longer be challenges for individuals, but for the entirety of existing human civilization, which would be replaced. Therefore, based on this reality, Adler proposed humanity's ultimate path to salvation: building community spirit through cooperation with others and contribution to society. However, on the path to cooperation, there is always one obstacle: the inferiority complex. If we want to avoid all troubles and suffering, we must discover the error we have attributed to life within our inferiority complex. It is this very inferiority that shapes our lifestyle. The lifestyle, Adler refers to, encompasses each person's individuality, personality, and character. Adler believed that a person's lifestyle is formed by the age of 4 to 5, meaning that their personality and way of thinking from these early years influence and shape them into adulthood. So, how can we know if our lifestyle has problems? How can we know what our inner complex is? Then, let's explore the next section: how to find the deep-seated complex within yourself. The book presents an excellent method: returning to childhood memories where you truly understand yourself. Close your eyes and see what images of your early years appear to you. Using myself as an example, the first image that comes to mind is being lost at age 5. I was at a private preschool, waiting for my mother as usual, but she never came to pick me up. Somehow, I secretly left on my own to find her, crying amidst a crowd, and then got lost. Many years later, even when joking, I still blamed my mother for it. After reading this book, I realized that this childhood memory had followed me into adulthood and solidified my character. In reality, the reason I blamed my mother was that I felt abandoned. I desperately needed and expected her attention. This is also a manifestation of a complex, a desire for others' attention. That's why, growing up, I often criticized my mother about many things. I knew not to live in expectation of others, but it wasn't until I read this book that I gained a solid psychological logic and argument that helped me understand myself better, and from there, I could change. The second image that appeared, around age 9, was me taking care of and playing with my younger sister. This is a beautiful memory, and it further convinced me of Adler's argument. He encouraged all parents, when having a second, third, or fourth child, to let the older siblings participate in nurturing and caring for the younger one. As a child, I used to complain that my mother made me babysit all summer, but today, I truly thank her for giving me the opportunity to participate in caring for my sister. It nurtured my cooperative spirit effectively. When you close your eyes, you'll see both joyful and sad memories. These are all mirrors reflecting whether your psychology is healthy or facing problems. You need to understand that individual psychology is, in essence, about identifying deficiencies in cooperation with others, stemming directly from your childhood memories. Start changing from within the family and school education. At this point, you'll see how greatly childhood influences each of us. The family in the early years is the most crucial place for shaping a person's lifestyle, and school education is a continuation and supplement to the family. So, let's talk about family first. When a mother first holds a child, she begins the first act of cooperation with this baby. At this moment, whether the mother truly loves her child and enjoys holding them becomes especially important, because a mother who truly loves her child will easily hold them comfortably, especially when bathing the baby, who will not fuss but happily laugh and play. This is precisely cooperation. You will see that the first cooperation begins with a mother's true love for her child. In reality, Some mothers are clumsy when hugging or bathing their child, very likely because, deep down, they feel the child's arrival is an inconvenience, and they weren't truly ready for motherhood. The greatest gift that heaven bestows upon parents is the opportunity to care for their children from the very first days. Earning money is crucial for maintaining the family's economy and for the arrival of a new member. But if you miss those early days to build your child's capacity for cooperation and help yourself learn cooperative living, that would be a tremendous pity. If you love your child, when you care for them with connection and dedication, your child can feel this sense of cooperation. Conversely, many fathers and mothers complain often about household chores. Complaining while cooking for their children, complaining while helping them with homework, complaining about everything under the sun. This could be because, deep down, they believe they need a more exciting life, that their life shouldn't be like this. So, these complaints sometimes merely demonstrate that the person is seeking superiority within themselves. At this point, you will see that the child cannot learn to cooperate well from their parents. In another case, if parents do not cooperate sufficiently with each other, they cannot expect their children to know how to cooperate. If the father is always temperamental and controls family members, children will grow up believing that marriage is a form of subjugation and servitude. And if the mother constantly nags and controls everything, daughters will mimic their mother's personality, while sons will always live defensively, fearing criticism and waiting for an opportunity to conquer women. A common case is many mothers exaggerating their love for their children. "You are my flesh and blood. You are my everything." But be cautious with such expressions, as they can become a form of possession. The child will soon try to attract the mother's attention, thinking that the mother belongs only to them, leading to manipulative behaviors. For instance, the child might act out, wake up in the middle of the night, wet the bed, scream, toss and turn, etc. They believe that acting out is the only way to make their mother come to them and assert that the mother is theirs. As they grow up, they will develop a self-centered personality. Adler truly wished for a revolution in education, where teachers could prioritize caring for individual students to compensate somewhat for family education. However, in my opinion, this view might not be very suitable in today's era, when many teachers are also very busy, teaching to keep up with the curriculum. The pressures of lesson planning already make them very tired, and caring for each individual is very difficult. But parents are different. Parents can absolutely change when they have the right knowledge base and cooperative methods, because deep down, most parents want their children to live better lives. Therefore, I will focus on conveying knowledge about family here and hope that all those who are and will soon be parents will learn to change themselves. As for education in schools, I will only list a few points that I personally find useful. First, strictness and punishment are two taboos when teaching students, because once you are strict and use punitive measures, you will find it difficult for children to establish communication and connection with you. Second, teachers should humble themselves to engage in equal dialogue with students, caring for each child from the bottom of their heart, paying attention to their future. Additionally, they should focus on each child's strengths, helping them develop their superior aspects. Only when a child understands this can they treat others fairly and learn to cooperate without needing to be a class monitor or student leader. Adler believed that genuine connection with students is the true mission of an educator. And third, never use the phrase, "You're very smart, but not very hardworking," to encourage students. In reality, many teachers use this gentle form of criticism with the main goal of motivating students to be more diligent. However, this approach inadvertently triggers a false sense of superiority in children. If I'm already smart, why do I need to study hard? They will never overcome laziness. Just like the core theoretical ideas on parenting in the famous book, Positive Discipline, or the knowledge for maintaining long-lasting relationships in the popular book, Relationship Skills, both originate from Adler's individual psychology. You might want to read these two books first if you wish to find today's featured book easier to understand. However, the reality is that we learn many practical methods, but haven't truly utilized their full potential. Learning from Adler's philosophy is the best way to deeply understand the issues. Therefore, I sincerely recommend you read this book, along with some especially important messages in this discussion today. The more you read, the more you travel, the more you learn, the more you will know that no one truly controls their circumstances. Life is short, humanity is fragile. The three practical problems, the three barriers of career, social relationships, and love marriage are always before us. We are constantly seeking solutions to problems, but are never satisfied with the status quo. No matter what, humans will always strive. But you must remember one thing: only by cooperating with others will our struggle be full of hope and meaning. That struggle is a lifelong journey to discover the true meaning of life within you. You will find that almost all books guide us towards a benevolent heart, fostering compassion and developing love within ourselves. Just as Inamori Kazuo in his book, Kokoro, advised us, we must live with an altruistic heart, knowing how to give to achieve lasting success and happiness. Breaking free from a captive mindset shows us that by living for others, we can escape the chains of thought that imprison us in suffering and thus live with true purpose. As for Adler, he once again affirms for us that an even grander meaning lies in transcending our individual ego to live a life of contribution, cooperation, caring, and service to others. If we can do so, we will touch upon the true meaning of life. The book, What Life Should Mean to You, differs from other books in that it delves into the individual psychology within each of us to find the reasons why we cannot live for the community, why we struggle to cooperate with loved ones or those around us. The root cause here is the deep-seated inferiority complex that originates in childhood and follows us into adulthood, and it is this very complex that causes us to lose sight of life's meaning. As Einstein once said, the value of a man should be seen in what he gives and not in what he is able to receive. Therefore, I hope that you and I can overcome our complexes and find our true self-worth to become excellent with a serene, peaceful heart, yet one full of compassion. Live your life to the fullest and give more, so that your complex becomes the starting point for you to achieve superiority.